الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Him. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our soul and from our sinful deeds. Those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can misguide them. Those who are not guided by Allah, there is no guide for them. I bear witness that there is no deity, there is no God worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and messenger. O you who believe, revere Allah as it should be revered, and die not except as Muslims. Amma ba'd. To proceed. It's very good to see you brave souls this morning. We haven't even gotten a week into the month of Ramadan, and so it's really good that you're here. This Tuesday will be our first week completion of the month of Ramadan, and I'm sure the iftars and the tarawiyahs and the late evenings are making it quite a stretch for you. May Allah fortify you and nourish you and give you strength to keep on trucking and getting the blessings of this great month, inshallah. I would like to welcome all of you to ISLAM, the Islamic Society of Leading American Muslims, an organization established to conduct da'wah in the United States of America, to proclaim the true and peaceful message of Islam, and to nurture, educate, and empower those people who were born in this faith and those people who come back to this faith, otherwise known as reverts or converts. Do we have anybody here for the first time today? Okay, alhamdulillah. Would anybody like to just review a little bit about what we talked about last week? The last things we talked about.
We're talking about staying in the masjid.
We talked about itikaf.
Yes. And why it was important for, I don't know if to say it correctly, but the night of power, I can't pronounce it correctly, but
Laylatul Qadr.
yeah, Laylatul
Night of
Qadr.
power. Very good, very good. Okay. All right. What was the last thing we talked about? Was that the last thing we talked about? I think so. Okay. Because that's what I thought too. And what this is addressing on the slides up here is Eid. We did not start talking about Eid last week, right?
We do.
We did?
You said today I was going to be something about zakat. I thought we did talk about that.
No, I didn't think I finished. Did I talk about the garments last week?
Yes.
Okay, and you guys are right. Okay, here's where we are. Alhamdulillah. The aim of a Musallaa, and a Musallaa is a place of prayer. So when you think about making salat, it is the gathering or the great majority of Muslims in one place. That is referred to as a Musallaa. So on the Eid, we actually create a Musallaa in the back of this masjid, for example. There's a conglomerate of masajid, which is plural of masjid, that creates a Musallaa at the fairgrounds over in Pine Hills. And they pray their Eid there. There are people that go to Turkey Lake and they create a Musallaa, where they gather the greatest majority of Muslims in one place for that Eid celebration. Now, when you go to Eid this year, I want you to be aware of the manners that you should adopt, or the etiquettes that you should adopt, that are most authentic according to the Quran and Sunnah. Jabir bin Abdullah said, when it was the day of Eid, the Prophet ﷺ used to alter his route of returning. So in other words, he would take Colonial Drive going to Pine Hills and 408 coming back. Or he would take I-4 and then come back on Turkey Lake and he'd pick up OBT or John Young or something like that. So the idea was actually the essence of this, you may wonder what this means, so you don't take it literally, is so that you can greet more Muslims and see more people, give them the blessing of Eid, because you got to think about in those days you would pass those people coming and going from visiting houses of Muslims on the Eid, on those festivals. Imam al-Baghawi said, it is preferred that the people leave for the Musallaa after praying the dawn prayer Fajr so that they can take their places and make takbir while the Imam proceeds when it is time for the prayer. So, ideally, like all prayers, the earlier you get there, the greater the blessing. The sooner you get to the masjid on Jummah, for example, the more blessings you receive. So ideally, you get there and you begin the takbir, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahil hamd. Now, that is the sunnah. There's no argument about that. Some masajids do a longer version, which I cannot find any authentication for. I'm not going to argue with them. That's fine with me that they do what they do. If they can give me the proofs, then that's good. But what the first generation of Muslims did was Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahil hamd. Now, there's a real beautiful, I always cry when I do this. I know you guys can't imagine that I cry when I do anything.
No, they don't.
Yeah. But the spirit of just sitting there and praising Allah in unison after 30 days of fasting or 29 days of fasting, you're really victorious. It's like that going across that ribbon in a marathon. And you're excited and you know that after that khutbah, you're going to visit all of your friends, all of your relatives. You're going to eat with folks and fellowship with folks and talk about the joys of Ramadan. So it is a very, very, it's just one of my, it's honestly, I think it's the favorite morning of the year for me. And I know that whenever we lived in California, when I first embraced Islam, and it always brings tears to my eyes when I think about it, we would have our Eid at Cal State Northridge. And I'm not exaggerating to say that I think there would be around 20,000 people there. And because you realize we're talking about Los Angeles, California. And you would get out of your car even as early as I would go. And I'd always be one of the first ones there. And you would already hear them on the microphone, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And you would hear this, mashallah. And it's so touching to hear the Muslims praising Allah. It's just, how many will have their first Eid this year? 1, 2, mashallah. 3. I'll be interested to hear your report of that experience. So I'm teaching you from the beginning. Be there early. Now, I'm going to warn you. Here, if they say we're going to start at 8 o'clock, that means that really and truly you want to be here about 7:30. You want to be parked. Parking is crazy. And even though they say 8 and they try to be on time, typically that means 8:10 or 8:15. Hopefully one day we'll get where we do what we say and say what we do. That's what Muslims are supposed to do. But we just try to accommodate the people. He wants you to complete the same number of days, and that must magnify Allah, takbir, for having guided you so that you may be grateful to Him. This actually comes from the Holy Quran, this idea of the takbir, that you completed the number of days of the fasting and now you're sitting and you're just praising and waiting for that glorious khutbah to come, for that window to close where you have paid your zakat. And And of course, that's where we'll be moving into next after we talk about this, inshallah. On the way to the Musallaa, one should be saying the takbir out loud. Instead of arguing with your spouse about we're being late or we're not going to find parking, you should be saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. And it's such a wonderful feeling when you're going down I-4 and everybody in the car is chanting Allahu Akbar. Instead of, Mommy, he's looking at me. Tell him don't look at me. Or, get over, you're elbowing me. Or, why couldn't you get ready on time? But rather praising Allah. So, it's really great. Umar used to make the takbir in his tent in Mina such that the people in the masjid could hear him, and so they would make takbir, and the people in the market would make takbir such that Mina would resound with the takbir. So imagine that the people that stop at the Winn-Dixie, maybe to get some refreshments to give it the takbir, were saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, so loud that we heard them at the masjid over here. That's the sort of ideology that on these Eids, on these festivals, these two that Allah has given us, people are just glorifying Allah in the market. So imagine if you were at Millennium Mall and you were walking on the lower level and you heard somebody on the top, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Imagine.
Security.
Yeah.
Like, terrible.
All right. So here I have recorded it for you. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. There is none who has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, and to Allah belongs all praise. That's what you want to be saying on the way to the masjid. And that is powerful, folks. I mean, how that is setting the tone for you to receive the reward. But this is the sunnah. This is what we should be doing. But I know most of us do not know that. Most of us know what we saw when we grew up. Our mom and dads were arguing because somebody was late, and we got to go to all these places, and you didn't tell me we were going here, and I thought we were going here, and now this person, and it's all of that. Let it be about praising Allah and glorifying Allah. Make sure that this year you teach your family this and you implement this. And what to eat during the Eids, the Messenger of Allah would not set out in the morning of Eid al-Fitr until he had eaten some dates. Now I'm going to put this in the good news for modern man terminology. You are no longer fasting, folks. It is no longer Ramadan. It is Shawwal. So you're allowed to get up and have breakfast, in other words.
Yeah.
You get up and eat. Go to the masjid. People come to the masjid, you hear their stomachs, and it's like really weird. Because you think, don't they know that Ramadan is over? That's why we're saying Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Nawal reported Abdullah bin Umar used to bathe on the Friday of Fitr before setting out for the Musallaa. So the essence of this is we want to be clean before we go to the house of Allah. So many people take a ghusl, but the idea is to be clean and to have on your best clothing that you have. Imam Ibn Qudaymah said it is preferred to purify oneself by bathing for Eid. Ibn Umar used to bathe on the day of Fitr. So, essence of this, and we make it really simple, is that we just want to be clean when we go to pray. There are no sunnahs before the Eid prayer. So when you get there for the Eid prayer on that morning, there are no sunnahs before, like the sunnahs before Fajr. Okay? You will go and begin to do your takbir. That's what you will do first.
Are there any salutations to the Musallaa? Like when you go and you pray 2 rakats?
Well, you can do that, yes. You can make salutations to the Musallaa just as if you were going to the masjid and you would pray 2 rakats. Typically those 2 rakats are, in my understanding, a salute to the masjid. But you can always do 2 rakats when you're going to a place of worship. So you can do it. I'll have to get some more clarification on that.
But you cannot do sunnah
So
before
remind
the
me of that.
You cannot do sunnah before the prayer.
There is no sunnah for it. That's the point. You see, remember you're going to pray Fajr before you leave home.
Fajr prayer.
So you would pray your sunnahs at home. Unless you came to the masjid and prayed Fajr, went back home and then came back. But there is no sunnah for the Eid prayer. And we'll talk about that in more detail, inshallah. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I just had a question. I'll be in a very rural area on Eid this year, and so what do I do? Do I pray Eid by myself, or like what do you do? Do you have to either pray it in the group or just don't have a chance to pray at all?
Would you write that question now, Miss Soon, and I'll get an answer to that? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. It's not far. It's not obligatory. So what that means is you don't have to do it. But the question is, could you do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll check on that. I'm pretty sure you could do it. You know, just pray to the cause and make that in your heart for Eid. But the Eid prayer is very different, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you. It doesn't look exactly like the Fard prayer, and I'll cover that in the slides today, inshallah. Yes, I'm sorry.
I wanted to make clear that we pray on Eid day first in the morning and then go masjid for Eid prayer.
That's what I said.
That's what I used to I do.
Yes.
So I thought I wanted to make clear
Exactly.
that we don't have to do masjid straight without doing first.
Exactly. The gathering of people for Eid is greater than that on the day of Jummah, and the saying of Takbir has been permitted in Eid. Now, it is because of this, sister, that I'm going to talk about the importance of trying to be at the Eid. Because if you think about it, the Eid for us is like the Christmas for Christians. I'm trying to do a correlation. Or Easter for Christmas. For Christians, I mean.
Yeah.
So they're very important days. These are the highlights of the year. They're the greatest day of the year. So much so that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the Ahadith said that if a woman is menstruating, she should still go. Even if she doesn't have a garment, she should borrow her companion's garment. A friend of hers can loan her a garment, or she should actually borrow her a garment. So that's how important this is. If you can't be there, alhamdulillah, but hopefully you'll see, based on these ahadith, the importance of this day. And it is said that the Eid prayer is one of the symbols of Islam, so that's pretty powerful. Because I think, even though we know that in the first 3 centuries of the Christian church, Christmas was not a symbol of Christianity, it has become a symbol of modern day Christianity. But this comes from the source that the Eid prayer is actually a symbol of Islam. And think about it, it really represents the solidarity of the collectiveness of Islam. Because think about it, I believe that one year I did the Eid at Turkey Lake and there were 7,000 people there, right? This was here in Orlando. And here we will probably have about 1,000 people. Naran's saying more. I'm usually very conservative. But I can tell you that the time that I conducted the Eid service, that I was the khatib, the speaker, at Turkey Lake, People stood in line to hug me for an hour and 15 minutes. I was exhausted when it was over because it was an Eid that was just, everybody was moved and everyone was crying, and it was just a very powerful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just blessed us that day. And
Right after you had your cancer.
it was right after I had my cancer, but there were people standing in line for 1 hour and 15 minutes to hug me after it was over. And I thought, wow, it's just, you can't explain it. I mean, the joy of seeing people you haven't seen, I mean, it's bigger than Christmas. And I don't mean to discount Christmas. That's not my intention here. But I'm just trying to explain it because for us, if you think, this year, I will be very surprised if there are not about 10,000 people at Turkey Lake. Because a lot of masajids get together and they go there. And the fairgrounds, do you know what their figure was last year, Laura?
It's more than 10,000.
But it's more than 10,000 at Pine Hills. I mean, that's phenomenal. It's like, forgive me, it's almost like a mini Hajj in a sense that that's what you're going to look forward to, folks, for you that are going the first time. Be prepared. Because, everywhere you turn, people are just hugging you and grabbing you, and it's very special. The obligatory nature of Eid, and I think this will be the answer to your question, sister. The renowned scholar Ash-Shawkani said, no, that the Prophet continually practiced this prayer on every Eid. He never, in any one of the Eids, left it out. He ordered the people to go to it, so much so that he also ordered the aggression of the mature women, young girls, and the menstruating women. He ordered the menstruating women to stay away from the actual prayer, but ordered them to witness the good deeds and supplication of the Muslims. He even ordered the women who don't possess outer garments to be clothed with the outer garments of their companions. So that's where we say that it's obligatory. That's where we base it upon, because the Prophet never missed it. And anything the Prophet never missed is something that we want to try to adopt in our life. For example, just to throw this out, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never missed the 2 sunnahs for Fajr. He never missed wajib or witr. So as we elevate ourselves spiritually, we want to adopt those things that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never left out. Even though they're not obligatory, those are tools for us to elevate ourselves spiritually. Now here is more evidence regarding Eid. If Friday prayer, the Jummah prayer, and the Eid coincide upon the same day, then the Eid prayer cancels out the Friday prayer. That's a choice, folks. But it nonetheless comes from the authenticated Sunnah that if Eid happens to fall on a Friday, that Eid prayer actually takes precedent over the Jummah. That's powerful, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think that speaks volumes to the specialness of this event. But I tell you that your hearts will be touched in a way. It's just a phenomenal experience. Yes, sister, I'm sorry.
So if you don't pray the Jummah, you still pray the Duha prayer?
Yeah, you would pray the Duhur prayer and to substitute wherever you are. Because what would happen, let's say you're going to a lot of people's houses, you just pray there. You make a Jummah there. The time of the Eid prayer. A lot of people want to know what does the Quran and the Sunnah say? Well, it comes from the Sunnah. Ibn al-Qiyam said he used to delay the Eid al-Fitr prayer and hasten the prayer of Eid al-Adha. Why do you think he would do that? Yes. Yes, sister, go ahead.
Because the people needed to go slaughter their lambs on Eid al-Adha, so their sacrifice, so they needed to go early and get it done.
Outstanding.
Could you repeat
What
that again?
sister said was that on Eid al-Adha, what do we do after that service? We go slaughter. and we give a third to the poor, a third to our neighbors, and a third to our family. I mean, for a third for us, sorry, yeah, we give a little bit too. And so that's a big job. And I'll share with you that, you know, when I first became, the first year I was a Muslim, I decided that I would slaughter. So after the Eid service, I took a guy that I was doing dawah to that worked for NBC. He's actually an amazing graphic artist. And I didn't know that he could not take the sight of blood. So I asked him to film this. So I go and I choose the lamb of my choice, and the lamb just follows me. It's like it's almost like he knew or that it was meant to be sacrificed for this Eid. And I laid it down, I petted it, I gave it some water, I did the zabiyah, the cutting the way it's supposed to be done, and then I gave it out of mercy some more water. It is a long process, folks. In Orlando, I've done it at one of the slaughterhouses here. They don't let you do the cutting yourself because there's just too many people and they don't have the facility. When I was in Saudi Arabia, I watched people do this.
So what happened with
Chris is holding the camera, and I looked over there when I took the cut on the lamb. He started falling back, and he almost fainted. The people, I said, "Catch that brother! I'm doing the slaughter." They had to catch him, so the camera was all like this. Yes, brother.
Even at that time, before you like cut the lamb, do you have to say Bismillah before?
You say Bismillah before you cut the lamb, exactly, or the goat, or whatever you're slaughtering.
Or don't we say Allahu Akbar when we do Qurbani?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is from Quran.
Because when my husband said I cannot stand the blood, but I learned back home how to do the Qurbani for children.
Yes, I remember you.
Yeah, I asked my husband.
Qurbani is a.
Same.
It's the same thing. It's zabiyah, but it's more of an Urdu word, I think.
Yeah, it's
Urdu word meaning slaughter.
Yeah.
So that's why that the Eid al-Adha is delayed. I mean, the Eid al-Fitr is delayed because we can let people rest. They've been fasting for 29 or 30 days. And you can see here another hadith. Sadiq Hassan Khan said the time for Eid prayers after the sun has risen a length of a spear up until Zawal, which is the midday. So technically speaking, according to the fiqh, you can pray Eid al-Fitr anytime up until noon. So we could technically have it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Why do you think most people don't have it at 10 or 11 in the morning?
Because they probably wouldn't show up. They're going visiting.
They're going visiting and it's hot. In California, did nobody want to be at Cal State Northridge at 11 o'clock in the morning when they could be sitting at somebody's air-conditioned table eating? Yes, sister.
So that's from, say, sunrise to midday?
To midday, yes. And that's according to the Sunnah. So if you're ever traveling and you find that, well, this person, they're doing their Eid at 11 o'clock, we always do ours at 8, there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong. So I'm giving you the proofs for that. So now you have that piece of education.
Imam Said?
Yes.
I'm going to be traveling as well on the 8th, and I was looking at the place where I'm going to be, and they actually have 3 different main prayers. Like one at 6:30, one at 9:30, and one at 10 or 11.
Yeah. Now, we don't implement it well here, but we actually have 2 here. So the people that come late. So what's going to happen is when you stand up to pray, you're going to see all these people running, which obviously is not the etiquette of the Muslim. You're not supposed to run to the prayer. But you'll see this, I promise. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. They will park you in, they'll block you in, let me warn you. You will come back to your car and not be able to get out, possibly. Just let me warn you in advance. Just say, Alhamdulillah, I'll get out when Allah is intending me to get out, whenever that person gets through greeting another 300 people that he hadn't seen for a year. Then I'll be able to move my car. I'm just telling you like it is. Anybody disagree with me here?
No.
That's the way it is. So, In a prayer schedule, there's the time for Fajr and Shuruk. And Shuruk is a sort of what we call a mid-morning prayer. It's not an obligatory prayer. But if you look at the prayer schedules that I gave you, this one, for example, calls it Shuruk, yes. And some people call it Duha. It is not a fard prayer, but it's an extra prayer that some very pious people pray. So some people, they pray their 5 obligatory prayers. They pray this Shuruk in the morning, and that's sometimes after Fajr. As a matter of fact, there's some ahadith that if you read the Quran, from the end of the Fajr prayer to Shuruk, there's some great rewards. I mean, really great rewards. And I know people that come to this masjid, because when I used to drive to this masjid in the mornings for Fajr, there are some men that actually stay here, they're retired, and they read the Quran to Shuruk. They don't leave the masjid until Shuruk. Since it is distasteful to pray immediately after Shuruk, we have to wait the length of a spear before we pray Duha. The majority of classic scholars are of the opinion that the post-sunrise prayer, Ishraq, is the same as the mid-morning prayer. I don't want you to get caught up in all of this. I'm trying to teach you something, but I think I'll make that slide less complicated. And it's for this reason, for example, that you don't see these 2 prayers listed separately, but you will always see the Shuruk prayer on your prayer calendar. And if I pass this around, you can see this. I will, if you're interested. Thank you, wife.
I have one.
Perception among the Hanafis of the Indian subcontinent is that Salat al-Ishraq and Salat al-Du'a are 2 separate prayers. The recommended time for offering Ishraq prayer is about 20 minutes after sunrise, whilst the Duha prayer is offered later on. There again, I don't want you to get caught up in this. I just want you to know that if you're ever at the masjid or people are talking about these prayers, you'll know what they're talking about. They're not fard prayers. They are nafil prayers. The messenger, yes. Sorry.
Can we pray in between Shura, bit after the sun rise and 12 o'clock in between we can pray Shura?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I do. I try to do that.
Yes. It's highly recommended, actually.
Yeah.
The Messenger of Allah encouraged offering this prayer directly after sunrise. Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik narrates that the Messenger of Allah said, whoever offers this morning Fajr prayer in congregation, then remains seated making the dhikr of Allah until the sun rises, and thereafter offers 2 rakats, they will receive the reward of performing a Hajj and an Umrah. That's powerful, isn't it, folks? So these folks that I'm telling you, some of these retired men that I know, that go to the masjid for Fajr and stay until sunrise and then pray these 2 rakats, they actually receive the reward of performing a Hajj and an Umrah.
It feels so good.
And it feels so good. Yes, it does. It really does. I've done it before. And, you know, this is the beauty, folks, of living near a masjid. You know, it's obligatory really for men to be in the masjid for all the prayers, actually. We live in a society that doesn't make it easy for us to do that. But in reality, it is obligatory for men to be in the masjid for every prayer. I mean, it really is. I mean, to live near the masjid, when you get where you pray most of your prayers in the masjid, you really experience that ahadith that says when you aren't in the masjid, you feel like a fish out of water. Because the masjid becomes personalized to you. It doesn't become the masjid, it becomes this place where you go and you connect with Allah, the divine intelligence, and you have this beautiful experience. As a matter of fact, I know many people that do this. They go pray, as soon as the prayer's over, they get up and leave. They don't get involved in any of the politics. They don't get involved in any of the gossip or anything. It's amazing. You watch them. They come in, they pray, and they leave. If somebody says Salaam Alaikum, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. But they just keep right on going. There are people that come to this masjid on bicycles. There are men that come on bicycles. And it's just beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
If somebody missed the Fajr prayer and do the Shura too, and Fajr prayer first, then Shura?
Yes. Yes. You would have to make up the Fajr, the Fard, before you do any Nafila prayers. The hadith implies that one should offer this optional prayer about 20 minutes after sunrise by remaining seated on the very place one offered the Fajr prayer, and by engaging in dua, supplication, and other forms of dhikr. So some people, let's say you're a new Muslim and you can't read Quran yet. You could sit there and say Allahu Akbar silently, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, or you could say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. You can just make dhikr, just praise Allah. Or you could even read the Quran in English.
Yeah.
Because that's a form of praising Allah. Thereafter, when the sun has risen properly, one should offer the Ishraq or Dua prayer. Now, let me ask you something, folks. I want to make sure you know this. Why do you have to wait till after the sun has risen?
Because we're not sun worshippers.
Very good. If we were to pray when the sun was rising, people would say, well, maybe they worship the sun.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to wait till after the sun is completely risen to do
You
that.
have to, or if
You
don't
have
do
to.
anything?
It's considered makruh. It's distasteful to Allah to pray when the sun is rising. Everybody knows makruh, right? Anybody who doesn't know the word makruh? Okay, it means distasteful, sister. So, for example, in the Islamic way of thinking, we have halal, which means it's allowed. There's no question about it. We have, help me, Naran.
Mandu?
Mandub is neutral.
Okay. Mubah.
Mubah, thank you. Not Maghrib. Makruh.
That pen is not writing very nicely.
I'm going to spell it this way, and then we have haram. And I want to go over this for my new Muslims because I think it's important. If something is halal,
Permitted.
it's permitted. If you do it, it's halal, you're going to get a reward without a question. If something is mubah, if you do it, you will get a reward. If you don't, you will not get punished. If something is mandub, it is just neutral. It doesn't matter. It's not, doesn't go either way. If it is makruh, it's distasteful to Allah. If you avoid it, you will get a reward. If you do it, you will not get punished. However, if you continue the makruh, then what happens is it usually leads to worse things. And what I will do is teach on this and give you a list of things that are considered this to help you understand this better. But I do want you to understand this because a lot of things that people call haram are not haram, they're makruh. For example, and haram, it means it is absolutely prohibited. It's a sin, it's prohibited. If you do the haram, you absolutely will be punished. If you avoid the haram, you will absolutely be rewarded. You see how it works? So I sort of describe this as 5 levels of sin. Or not sin, because that's not sin. But sort of 5 levels of looking at a deed or an action. Does that help you?
Antonio, got a question.
Yes, I'm sorry, brother.
Can you shed a little bit more light on makruh, if you don't mind?
Yes. It's basically, for example, because I know that the angels are around me all the time, and that Allah is more deserving of modesty than a human being, it is makruh for me to sit around naked in my house. You know, just let it all hang out, so to speak. That's considered makruh. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it says it very clearly in the hadith that Allah is most deserving of our modesty. And this is something that's disappeared from the world today, because nowadays if you go to the mall, people are naked. And they're not at home. Now, just between me and you, because I've been Muslim 25 years, I feel violated. When I was on the campus of UCF, there was many times when males and females approached me and I felt violated because of the amount of body that was being exposed. Now, if I feel violated, imagine how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala feels. And let's look at the depth of this, because I think this is beautiful that you touched on this. If you look at Fortress of the Muslim, there are actually dua that you say when you undress to protect you. Because not only are the angels seeing you when you're naked, and Allah is seeing you when you're naked, the jinns are around. And I don't want to take away from the dignity of this, but if you take this deeper and you think about, you know, some of the practices that are taught as normalcy in the West that people do naked. There's no way you can connect this to the fitra of Allah and to the heart of Allah. You know, I mean, I'm trying to do this as delicately as possible, but I mean, today it is a fad to have novelty shops. There's no modesty in that, folks.
Why do they have to pray naked? Something wrong with their head?
Well, I think I'm going to not go there, sister, because that's makruh. But it is very, I mean, you know, we have nudist beaches, I believe, here in Florida.
There's
Yes.
one in Kissimmee. There's a nudist resort.
There's a nudist resort in Kissimmee. There's a nudist, don't get so excited. There's I'm just teasing you. There's nudist beaches in LA, in California. So, I mean, it's a big thing. Even the, may Allah forgive me, I think I'm saying this right, I think it's the Wiccans or the ascertains, when they have the solas, they worship in the nude.
Yes.
Now, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people were worshiping in the nude. They were worshiping some of the idols in the nude. So people were running around the Kaaba. Imagine this, folks. The house that was built for the worship of one God, people were circumambulating this house naked. And that's why people came. That's why there was a pilgrimage before Islam, the event of Islam. People came to see this the same way they do today. So it's no different than the gentleman clubs, and that's the biggest oxymoron in the world. How can you call it a gentleman's club where people are, what kind of gentleman goes there?
Only gentlemen?
Well, that's what they call them,
No,
gentlemen's.
but I mean, are there only men in those places?
No, women go.
Go.
Women go to gentlemen's club.
I don't know because I've never been to one.
I
But,
already know, but I
They should be called Christian money club or
but do you understand, brother, did I answer your question sufficiently in terms of understanding?
You did. I just wanted my partners to grab.
No problem. Because this is a big part of Islam. Now, I'm going to give another example that I think is important about Mubah, or some sunnahs. For example, the kufi, the kufiyah that men wear on their head. Is it a requirement that I wear a kufi?
No.
No. If I wear a kufi for the sake of Allah, because I want to emulate the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then I will be blessed. If I don't, I will not be punished. My beard. My beard is a sunnah. I don't know what happened.
Just press your. You might have to, because sometimes when you don't touch for a while, it freezes. There you go.
All right. So my beard, is it a fard?
No.
No. So my beard is highly recommended. If I wear it because Rasulullah ﷺ wore it, I will be rewarded. If I don't wear a beard, will I be punished? No. Okay. Very good. That's the idea. Now, some rigid schools will tell you differently. As a matter of fact, I was boycotted at one time, and people refused to pray behind me after I trimmed my beard. Because if you get on YouTube and you look at an old pictures of me 27 years ago doing dawah, I had a beard down to here.
Wow.
And it looked like a raccoon around my face. It was the ugliest thing. No man in this world except one I've ever seen had an uglier beard than mine. It was not an invitation, I can tell you.
A mustache and a goatee.
Yes, and I'll give you another example now. Sometimes, and I know I've deviated a little bit, but I think this is a good lesson. Sometimes in the fiqh, in the Islamic jurisprudence of Islam, makruh changes. And let me tell you why. There are many verses in the Holy Quran that talk about the importance of life and how we are supposed to take care of our bodies. So years ago, before the scholars found out that there were 3,000 chemicals in a cigarette or in tobacco, they said that smoking was distasteful to Allah. Now you will not find a scholar that says it's makruh. All the scholars say that smoking is haram because it kills you. They know now that it kills you. It's a slow suicide.
Yeah.
Just to help you understand, does that expound on
So
it?
what is smoking?
Smoking is now haram because it kills you, and suicide is haram.
And it's like when you don't have anything to eat, the only thing that you have to eat and you have to survive is eating pork, the haram becomes
Actually, no. That's a great point, Deborah. Now, see, and this is why I always talk about the haram police. The haram police are dangerous. Because is pork always haram?
No.
Absolutely. If I'm in a desert, I'm stranded like Gilligan's Island, and I cannot find anything to eat except pork to survive, it is no longer haram for me. It's not even makruh, because I'm going to die if I don't eat it. If I'm in the desert and I am dehydrated, a plane crashed, and I survived, and I'm wandering around out there, and I find a can of beer. Disgusting beer.
It is disgusting.
And I can hydrate myself with it. Is it haram in that case?
No.
No, it's not.
Actually, can I beg to differ on that? If you're using a beer to hydrate yourself, it's actually going to do the opposite.
I understand. What I'm trying to teach you is intention. Because alcohol, we know, does dehydrate you.
Yeah.
But if you were drinking it because you were thirsty, and you were trying to satisfy your thirst, then it would no longer be haram. Okay? And that is from the fiqh. Okay? So, Many hadith recommend offering this prayer later on. The fuqaha, which are great scholars, mention the recommendation of offering it at mid-morning, halfway between sunrise and zawal, which is the time of the sun's zenith of midday, which is what Dr. Asifa was talking about.
It's really
So-
convenient, that's why I do it.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that I want you to know that this is a prayer that's prayed, that if you want to add it to your repertoire occasionally to bring you closer to Allah, then alhamdulillah, it is a very good time to do that. And I've covered enough about that. I've covered enough about that. I've covered enough about that. Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Jazairi said its time is from the sun rising a spear's length up until zawal, midday. It is best to pray the Eid al-Adha prayer at its earliest possible time so that people will be able to go and offer their sacrifices, and to delay the prayer of Eid al-Fitr so that the people will be able to give their sadaqah. This is the reason, folks. This is the Islamic reason. There is something called Sadaqah Fitr. Now we're going to be going into, I'm going to be teaching you about that. If you pray the whole month of Ramadan and you don't pray your Sadaqah Fitr, your fasting is not accepted.
You don't give your son. You pray your son.
Give it, exactly. Did I say pray it? I'm sorry. Give it. You do not pay it. That's what I thought I said. That's what I...
Fitra, you mean fitra?
Zakat al-Fitr. If you do not pay it, your fasting is not accepted. Does everybody understand that? So you will see that they pass the box around and they remind people. I always, if I am a khatib, and I was the khatib here last year, right, Mariam? Yeah, I was the khatib here for last year's khutbah. I remind people, make sure you pay your zakat al-Fitr. Because if you do not, your fasting will be in vain, it will not be accepted. And let me touch on that a moment as well. I think this year they're saying $8 a person, right?
7.
7 here?
He
Okay.
told Dr. Imam Tani.
He said 7.
Now
Okay.
7.
Whatever.
But we can give little more.
Yeah. Let's say that we have someone here, like Adnan and Mara are expecting. They already have 3 children, right?
Yes.
So he will pay Zakat al-Fitr on 6 people. I mean, I have to show you how that works. 3 children, himself, his wife, and the baby in the womb.
Wow.
So when you are pregnant, you actually pray zakat on the baby in the womb. That is authentic.
Sharon, did you go to secret? What? Oh, no.
Also, I don't want you to be surprised when you go to the Eid prayer. There is no iqamah. There's no adhan. Why?
It's not one of our obligatory prayers.
It's not an obligatory prayer. So you're not going to hear the adhan. So you might say, you know, an innocent new Muslim might say, oh wait, y'all forgot to call the adhan. We don't have one for that day. Ibn al-Qayyim said, and when he used to arrive at the Musallaa, he would begin the prayer without an adhan or an iqamah, nor saying the words collective prayer. And this is from Muslim and Bukhari. The Eid prayer is 2 rak'ahs, and this is taken from the narration of Umar, who said the prayer of traveling is 2 rak'ahs, the prayer of Eid al-Adha is 2 rak'ahs, and the prayer of Fitr is 2 rak'ahs. They are complete, not shortened, and this is taken from the word of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first rak'ah begins just like all other prayers, with the exception of the takbiratul ihram. And this will sort of surprise you. Because what will happen, and this gets confusing, the imam is going to stand up there and he's going to say, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And you'll be like, well, what's going on here? We never did this before. So for those of you, this is your first time, that is the way that it begins. So the first one, he's going to say 7 of those. 7. So I want you to remember that because we're about 3 weeks away from that.
So 7 times in the first time and how many in the second?
5.
5 in the second.
Yeah. Now I want to share something with you folks that confuses people because it really sounds like 6 in the second. Why? Anybody want to guess? Very good. When you're coming out of sujood, you say, oh, Allahu Akbar. That's not one of them. Then he's going to do 5 more. So you're going to hear 6. I just want you to know what's going on, folks. I don't want you to have any surprises. Or start running because you think you're in some kind of cult or something. You're in the right place, and that's what's supposed to happen.
Okay, so before he starts the prayer, he calls 6 times.
7 times for the first rak'ah?
Okay, but before starting the rak'ah.
Second.
No. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate. 7 times. Allahu Akbar. 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 And then the prayer starts. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And then the prayer starts. Then he's going to go into ruku. He's going to come back. He's going to go into sujood. He's going to say Allahu Akbar. That one doesn't count. Then he's going to do it 5 times and do the second rak'ah.
I'm asking those questions because I will be in a place that I'm sure there is not going to be any magic.
Now, I want to tell you something, folks. A lot of people ask me this question. Do we raise our hands when the imam says Allahu Akbar? And I'm going to give you the best that I've found. It has not been authentically reported from the Prophet that he used to raise his hands with the takbir of Eid. And I've worked on this. I have read as much of Bukhari and Muslim as I can read. Tirmidhi, Dawood, and I can't find anything that the Prophet raised his hand. Ibn al-Qayyim said, Ibn Umar, with his adherents following of the Sunnah, used to raise his hands with each takbir. So what does that mean? It means that you can do either one. Somebody might tell you don't do it. Just want to warn you. Just say, well, I know that Ibn Umar used to do it because Imam Sa'd showed me the hadith. But we don't have anywhere that the Prophet did it. If you can find it, I'd love to see it.
There was a reason to raise because non-Muslim, they used to hide these statues in the armpit.
Yes.
That's why they did. So when they do this, they all fell down.
All fell out. Okay.
Is it correct or just this?
Allah, I don't know this.
Oh, okay.
That's really interesting. I don't want to pick up those idols after they fell out of the altar.
That's what I heard.
Hopefully they had a lot of acts or whatever that deodorant's called. No specific supplication between the Eid takbirs has been authentically reported from the Prophet. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. When he completed the takbirs, he would begin reciting the opening book, Al-Fatiha. and after it read Surah Qaf. So most imams will read Surah Qaf if they know it, because that's what the Prophet did. Sometimes he read Surah Al-Qamar in one of the rakats, Surah Al-Ala and Surah Al-Ghashiyah in another one. So these are the different things that he did. So a lot of times you will see the imams will read these because this was what the Prophet did. And you could impress your imam by going and saying, by the way, did you pray Surah Al-Ghashiyah or Surah Al-Ala? I'm just curious because I know the Prophet used to do that. He'll probably tell you, yes, I did. So, one who misses the Eid prayer in congregation should pray 2 rakats. There you go, sister. I usually refresh myself, and I didn't get a chance to refresh last night. One who misses the Eid prayer in congregation should pray 2 rakats. Imam al-Bukhari said if one misses the Eid prayer, he or she should pray 2 rakats. I have heard that Hanafis are of the opinion that there is no qada for the Eid prayer. This is a Hanafi community. So somebody might predominantly. So somebody might tell you no.
Students, you're only praying it alone if you're not able to go in a congregation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what
What is a qada?
qada means to make up. It means a make-up prayer. I'm glad you asked that, Sharon. My new brothers and sisters in Islam, qada prayer means to make up. So, for example, qada, actually, is the correct way to say it. Qada, yes. But you'll hear people say qada. I'm making qada, but it's qada.
Allah.
Yeah, qada. It's the law, right? Qada, right?
Yeah, Mahabi is like that. You can pray
The Eid sermon should be after the prayers. Now, I'm just telling you what's authentic hadith. That's not the way it is. But that is the way that it was done with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the way it was done with the Tabi'een and the Tabi'een. Now, who doesn't know what I just said means?
It's the followers,
The first 3 generations of Muslims. The Sahaba were the companions of Musallaa, the Tabi'een were the next generation, the Tabi'een were the 3rd generation. Listen up, folks, and this is authentic. I can give you more proofs for this. The sermon is not obligatory. But the problem is they do the sermon first in America, so you're sort of stuck. Either you come late and hope you catch the prayer on time, but the sermon is not obligatory.
I don't think anybody would stand and rush if you did the sermon.
Khutbah, you mean khutbah? You pray
The khutbah,
prayer, you do khutbah?
according to authentic sunnah, the prayer was done before the khutbah.
Oh,
So the people could leave and then slaughter, or the people could leave if they were traveling to family to be with them after fasting for a month. So the sermon is not obligatory. You can check with any scholar. I know that might be a surprise to you, but the prayer is
Wajib.
wajib. It's like so highly recommended.
So in regular days, we do the khutbah before prayer.
Well, that's what we do here. That's our practice here. For example, I will come and do an English khutbah.
I hear.
And then, now I'm not being invited this year, but I usually get invited the day before. Really, I'm serious as a heart attack. I get a call and say, oh, you are doing the khutbah tomorrow, brother. Oh, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And then I stay up all night and don't sleep preparing.
Prepare some things before.
So that is the way according to the Sunnah, the prayer and then the khutbah. But what they do here, they do the English, they do a small Arabic, and then the prayer. Okay?
Because nobody will stay after the
think people would stay, but I just think that it's, I don't know. I'd have to ask, why do you guys do this? This was not what the prophet did.
That's a good
What
question. I'm sure you
prophet
know that
used
question.
to? What, how prophet used?
Prophet used to pray, and then the people were not required to stay for the sermon. So the prayer was first. This is the authentic greeting of Eid. And I'd like you to write this down, take a picture of it with your cameras. It's not Eid Mubarak and Eid Kareem. Now, that's what you're going to hear. Eid Mubarak, Eid Kareem, Eid Mubarak, Eid Kareem, Eid Mubarak, Eid Kareem. You can say it, but that's not what the prophet said. The prophet said, Taqabbala Allah minna wa minkum. May Allah accept it from you and us. Folks, I always try to teach you the way it was done in the time of the prophet.
This is Muslim Bukhari?
Yes. Yes, sister.
Imam Sykes, we always say that after each salah, to whoever's praying with us.
And that's right. I was going to say that. We say that after the salat. As a matter of fact, there's no hadith to this effect, but you will see men and women turn around after the salat and they're doing dhikr, the Kabbalah wa minna wa minkum.
Imam Sykes?
Yes.
And this is two parts to it. Like if you and I were praying together, I would tell you to cover Allah, and you would say to me, Minna minkum.
Right. Wa minna wa minkum. Yes.
So it's actually two responses.
Yeah. So if I say to Deborah, I come up to her, I say to Kabbalah wa minna wa minkum. She say wa minna wa minkum. What's wrong with her?
You're supposed to, I tell you to cover Allah, and you tell me Minna minkum.
Yes, wa minna wa minkum.
So it's a two
But some people will say, may Allah accept it from you and us, and then you would say back to them,
And from
wa minna wa minkum, right?
Minna minkum.
Minna wa minkum. Everybody clear on that? This is the authentic retort.
Salam mina.
The Kabbalah, Allah, minna wa minkum.
Allah.
The Kabbalah,
Allah mina
wa
wa
minkum.
minkum.
Yeah, may Allah accept it from you and us. So it's a dua.
So why we don't say salam alaikum?
Because this is what the prophet did. I don't know. I'd have to, I don't know why they did it. This is what they said. And we want, see, the beauty, folks, if you revive this stuff, you get rewards. Anything that you revive, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, that the people have deviated from doing, you're going to get a great reward for that because you're actually bringing people back to the authentic practice of Islam.
So I'm still confused. So you say the Kabbalah and the person replies with Minna minkum, or you say the whole sentence?
You could just say to Kabbalah and the person would say wa minna wa minkum. I always say the whole thing because, it's nothing wrong with it. May Allah accept it from you and from us. But when you retort back, you can just say from you and us. Or you can say the whole thing. I believe, and may Allah forgive me, that Musallaa would be to say the whole thing. But mostly colloquially, we do not say it in Arabic.
Yeah, I'll ask today.
Check on that.
Because I've always known to say cover Allah, and then your response would be Minna minkum.
But I think Fusaka is to say the whole thing. But check it out.
It's easier for me to say may Allah accept it from you and me.
And for those of you who are not Arabic speaking, just say may Allah accept it from you and from us.
Yeah.
Because when I do it, I'm usually sobbing my heart out, I'm crying, and I'm saying, I just say to the people, may Allah accept your fasting and all of your deeds in the month of Ramadan from you and from us. That's the essence of it. There's another beautiful thing about this, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would always pray for himself as well.
I do.
And so in this, you're praying for the person you're giving the dua to, and for you, for us. There's a neat principle there, I think. So any questions?
Can we, no questions, but I'd like to hear the people that have started fasting for the first time, their experience so far.
Okay. Anybody like to share their experience?